It is official, Adult Swim has severed ties with Rick and Morty co-creator Justin Roiland in a statement put out on the official Rick and Morty socials. Quote, Adult Swim has ended its association with Justin Roiland. Rick and Morty will continue. The talented and dedicated crew are hard at work on season 7, unquote. If you somehow missed the news, a couple weeks ago it came out that Justin Roiland has been charged with felony domestic violence, among other things. And since the news came out, a smattering of other creepy stories and DMs from and about Roiland have come to light. I'm not going to go into detail here about all of those, but the info is out there, and it is gross. Not long after Adult Swim's announcement, Roiland's video game company Squanch Games also tweeted that Roiland resigned from the company on January 16th. And as I was finishing this video, the news is official. Justin Roiland is now out at Solar Opposites. Just ignore any part of this video where I don't acknowledge this as a sure thing. But obviously, with Rick and Morty under contract for 40 more episodes, this has created a very awkward dilemma for Adult Swim, and frankly, I think they've handled it just about as well as they could have. What I appreciate about the statement is that they shout out the talented and dedicated crew of the series who have been working on season 7 for a while now. It would have sucked if the entire staff lost their jobs because of Roiland's actions. Rick and Morty is an incredibly steady gig, and those are not easy to come by in animation. In fact, I've heard rumors that the current writer's room penned a letter to Adult Swim and higher-up members of production refusing to continue working on the series if Roiland was still involved. And if that's true, good on them. But obviously, this also leaves a lot of major questions in regards to how the show will continue, considering Roiland is not just the co-creator, but the voices of the show's two main characters. Has a series ever had to recast its two titular characters before? Adult Swim has stated that their intention is to recast both characters prior to the release of season 7, but what will this entail? Well, let's try and work through it. If you don't know, season 7 has actually been entirely written for a while now, likely wrapping up the writing process not long after season 5's finale. And with a tentative 2023 release date for season 7, this very likely means that they've recorded and animated a chunk of the season already. This is going to make the process of recasting Rick, Morty, and any background characters Roiland has already recorded a bit more difficult. Rather than allowing new actors to perform the scripts to their own abilities, they will be forced to dub over Roiland's existing performances, at least for some of season 7. Who knows how much exactly. This is certainly not an ideal way for new actors to start their tenure as these iconic characters. A few years back, Big Mouth opted to recast the character Missy from Jenny Slate to Io Adebari, but having already animated season 4, they opted to only have Adebari dub over Slate's performance in the final episode of the season during a story beat that made sense for the changeover. She was then able to record season 5 fresh without any dubbing. With Roiland's situation, they won't really have the luxury of making that choice, and it's going to be a bunch of extra time and effort to first recast the characters and second redub the existing dialogue. In fact, if enough of season 7 is already animated, I would not be surprised if the season itself was delayed into 2024. Not that delays are anything new for Rick and Morty. And this is also going to beg the question, how will they approach the recast? Will they look to the impressive Rick and Morty impersonators and impressionists that are all over YouTube and TikTok, or will they bring in more traditional voice actors to hear their take on the characters? I think you really have to weigh these options carefully. While someone can be an excellent impressionist, that doesn't always make them a great actor. The big question becomes, do you want to focus more on the performance or simply making sure the voices match as closely as possible to the originals? Ideally, you find a happy middle ground. The person I see the most people talk about in terms of impressions is a guy named Sean Kelly, who admittedly does an incredible job at just about every Roiland voice.
Oh, well, you know, that's pretty cool. I never would have guessed that's, how they did that. Yeah, I always wondered, how Chicken Wire got made.
In fact, in a Vanity Fair video from last year, disgraced cartoonist Justin Roiland reacted to and reviewed impressions of his characters, and here's what he had to say about Sean Kelly's Morty voice.
So his Morty voice is also eerily on point. Like, I was telling him, I'm like, dude, you're so close that, like, we could record stuff and I don't think people would know who was who.
Not that we're going to take Roiland's opinion on anything else too seriously anymore, but when comparing voices, it's hard to deny. And watching through some of Sean's TikToks and videos, I do think he has pretty solid ad-libbing chops. To me, it would really make sense to hire someone like Kelly for, at the very least, some of the less substantial Roiland characters like Mr. Poopy Butthole or Mr. Meeseeks, but I do think he also may have what it takes to perform Morty. I haven't heard a better impression of the character personally.
Oh my god, that doesn't even make any sense.
However, one thing I would love to see the show do is actually hire 2 different actors for Rick and Morty. Obviously, Roiland's ad-libbing is a huge part of the show, and it's a tall task to replace his energy, so I think it actually makes more sense to approach it in a new way. Bring in a strong, seasoned voice actor to do Rick, and maybe someone like Sean Kelly or another strong voice acting candidate to play Morty, and allow these actors to actually play off of each other in the recording booth. Rather than try and mimic Roiland's style and dynamic, create a new dynamic between actors based on real chemistry. Find your best options for Rick and Morty and do chemistry tests through the casting process to not only find great candidates for the roles, but to find who has the best chemistry. Get the actors to perform their scenes together and see if it can breathe some fresh life into the show and characters. Another huge question for many people is the writing, but if I'm being honest, I don't think much will change. From what I've heard, Roiland was not involved in the writer's room in a hands-on way in many years, and on top of that, the writing staff is very likely already writing season 9 at this point. Writer Rob Schrab claimed that season 8's writing was underway all the way back in May 2022, so they are incredibly far ahead in terms of scripting and laying out the show. For this reason, don't expect anything too detailed in terms of meta references to the voice acting change, outside of maybe some picked up jokes or possibly a newly conceptualized cold open. I don't think we should expect the show itself to address the changeover through its plot, unless they opt to go back and write an entirely new episode, which seems very unlikely. But it would be very un-Rick and Morty-like if they didn't at least have some kind of meta joke or acknowledgement.
What happened? Why'd Justin Roiland die, Morty?
And maybe the biggest question of all is, will the show survive this? Obviously, they're contracted to do 40 more episodes, so it will continue at least 4 more seasons, but will fan interest in the show dwindle with its name being soiled so thoroughly, and with substantial changes to the main voice cast? And on top of that, interest in the show already seemed to be dwindling during season 6. Obviously, it was still very popular, but TV ratings are down substantially for the show, and on top of that, views for video breakdowns on season 6 were also down substantially, especially compared to season 5. For my channel and countless others, I'm gonna be honest, had Roiland remained a part of the production, I would not have watched or covered season 7 on the channel. Now, with these changes being made, I intend to play it by ear a little bit more. With season 6, my plan going in was to cover as much as possible, but that definitely isn't my plan going into season 7. I'm very glad the writers, artists, and production staff won't be losing their jobs, and in support of them, I will probably cover the premiere at least. I'm certainly curious to see what the show feels like without Roiland's voice, and I'd like to show support to whatever voice actors take up the unenviable task of replacing him. The show is definitely fortunate that we're still so far out from season 7's premiere, because Solar Opposites is in a much bigger pickle. Not only is season 4 meant to air sooner, likely this summer, but there's supposed to be a Valentine's Day special in just a couple of weeks. If they intend to follow suit and replace Roiland's characters in that series with new voice actors, I have a hard time imagining they can get that done before the Valentine's Day special. They're likely very far along on season 4 as well. They'll almost certainly have to dub over Roiland's performance for the entire season. Solar Opposites itself has been renewed through season 5, and I expect they're probably safe in terms of recording for the next batch. Whoever replaces Roiland's Corvo moving forward will probably be able to give a performance entirely their own for season 5. Hulu has also worked with Roiland on a few other projects, including the Felony Show Halloween special, and very recently the series Koala Man, created by Smiling Friends and YOLO Crystal Fantasy co-creator Michael Cusack. Fortunately, it seems like Justin was not as heavily involved in projects like these, primarily using his formerly respected name and clout to help get projects for other producers greenlit. Hopefully, his behavior doesn't sink these kinds of projects before they truly get a chance. Regardless, I'm glad that Roiland has been removed from Rick and Morty and the rest of the crew will get the opportunity to continue their hard work on the series. It would have really sucked if one shitty dude took down multiple successful crews and series with him. And it will actually be fascinating to follow how they recast the series. I can't think of any example of a major recast quite like this one. It could be a really cool opportunity for some unknown voice talent. And I would love to hear what y'all think about this. Is all of this too much to maintain your interest in Rick and Morty, or are you eager to see how it all pans out? Let me know below in the comments and stay tuned as we learn more. I expect casting announcements will probably happen within the next few months. All right, peace.
Johnny! Two Cellos!